So let's have just a conversation here for a few minutes about the work ahead. So John, I want to start with you. Tell me about how you've been able to build, frankly, the momentum to take on this next level of work of momentum pathways. How it was from co-requisite or math pathways to co-requisite. You built this commitment across your institutions to take on this full strategy like momentum pathways.
Thanks, Bruce. I think it really began with the creation of our Math Pathways Task Force and the composition of the task force. And one of the things that I think helped us is that the commissioner was able to appoint the task force members. And so to chair that task force, he selected Dr. Jim Herstein from the University of Montana, who is a longtime math faculty member, former department chair of math. He had credibility statewide. And the commissioner also selected other key folks to sit on that task force who had the gravitas, the credibility, I think, to engage in the conversations. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we made it very clear that they were in charge, and folks such as myself and Eric and others were simply providing support. So we built trust, and I think that was another thing. The other thing is that it didn't move along as quickly as we had hoped. I would say the first year we spent a lot of time deliberating and talking, and but what changed the day was one day, just out of the blue, about an hour before the meeting, I walked to Eric Rose's office and said, "What are you doing? Do you have time?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Well, can you do some research before in the next 60 minutes?" And he did. And he provided, Eric is one of our chief data individuals in our office. And so he provided some data that really started changing the conversation. And I think, as I mentioned in my talk, it's data-driven, I think, the discussions that really started going. And I think folks realized we had a problem and that we needed to start addressing it. So we built trust, we let the faculty lead, we let data help us guide it through.
Great, John. So Donna, I mean, as you mentioned, right, you're doing so many great things at CUNY. We already heard about it a little bit yesterday with Scott. So why a momentum strategy? Why do you need to take this next step?
So we really think that it's important as a system to pull together what is going on across the university. CUNY is a small city, or several small cities put together. So if we're really going to make a difference across the system, it's important, even as successful as many of the initiatives that I personally lead, ASAP, CUNY Start, Math Start, it's important that we think about the needs of all students. And that's something that the strategic framework lays out very carefully and clearly, that we have to think as we move into the 21st century about how are we moving the needle for everyone. And thinking about, how to do that, we have to embrace the core elements of these strategies, as well as really think about, what will work across a system. So the notion of degree mapping seems like such an incredibly simple idea. What do you need to do to graduate in 2 years or in 4 years if you're an associate or a bachelor's student? There is no easy answer to that at the City University of New York. So creating a standardized definition of what a degree map is, how you have a conversation with a student of here you are, how are you going to get there in 2 or 4 years is essential. So it's really about thinking systematically across the needs of all of the students.
Great. So Corley, I mean, I think West Virginia has been in the headlines, right, about having been maybe one of the most negatively affected by the economy and the changes in the economy. Talk to us about how this work is going to help really restore faith in the American dream in West Virginia through higher education.
Well, you're correct that the coal industry, which was the main economic driver in West Virginia for the past 120 years, has collapsed. There are counties in the coal fields where the economy has been devastated because of the loss of coal jobs. So in West Virginia, we're looking to change the economy. We are an energy state. We've always been an energy state. Actually, our path forward also involves energy with natural gas. So you might say, well, aren't you just trading coal for natural gas? Well, yes, but natural gas has the ability to have byproducts, polymers and plastics. So if West Virginia can capture some of those downstream byproducts from the natural gas industry, it could really turn the economy around. There are economists who are saying there could be 100,000 new jobs in West Virginia in the next 15 years or so. So consequently, as a faculty member said last night, our colleges have to start thinking about training students for jobs that may not exist now, but will be there, and we need to have the workforce ready. And we want as many West Virginians as possible to be able to take advantage of this new economy. So consequently, as I mentioned in my talk, 51% of the jobs being created between now and 2025 will require an associate's degree or higher. So this was the gist of the Double the Degrees program that I mentioned in my talk, where we're trying to get from 18,000 degrees to 40,000 degrees, so that we'll have West Virginians that are there and ready and able to take these new jobs. And our momentum strategy also involves the high schools. And someone yesterday said the FAFSA was the worst document ever created, and I think there's some truth to that. And so we've been working with the high schools. Dr. Adam Green and our Student Affairs Office has gone out to just about every high school in the state and held, on an annual basis, and held FAFSA workshops to help students get the FAFSA in. The community college system started sending out letters to students saying, you're admitted. Come to your local community college on this day or this day, and you can register for classes. If you can't make those days, call, and we'll give you a time to come and register. Then once we have them, and we've increased access into college, once we have them, we need to make sure that they can complete. So that involves a number of strategies. We have done a central purchase with DegreeWorks, which is a course scheduling software, so that students are able to look up their courses. Of course, that automatically involves degree mapping, so that the students can see what courses they need. They can work with their advisor. I think something that we need to work on is block scheduling, because we have a large adult cohort that needs to be retrained. So we need to look at being able to offer classes in specific day parts. So they can say to their boss, can I have the mornings off? I'll come in and work 12 to 9. We can give them all the classes that they need to be able to complete the degree. And finally, I would say we've done our research, and particularly in the four-year schools, completing 30 hours in the freshman year is a huge indicator of success, a huge indicator of graduation. We also found that students that completed 24 hours or fewer in their freshman year, their chances of graduation tanked. So it's really important for us to get students to take as many credit hours as they can in that first year.
Great, thanks, Corley. So Betty, I had the pleasure of being down in Houston right before the holiday, and sat in a meeting with all the representatives of Houston GPS, and it was an eye-opening experience, an honest, upfront conversation about institutions that are not part of the same system, that have different populations of students trying to find a way to work together on a common strategy. Tell me what the secret of what is happening down there. How is it that institutions are actually having that conversation and getting the work done there?
I think the greatest rationale I can give for that was the fact that every stakeholder understood that if we were to meet the needs of our diverse community, which was growing by leaps and bounds, we had to come together and provide unity and make sure that the students' needs were not just met at one college, but all of our colleges, and would make sure that when the students transferred over to our four-year institutions, that the work that we say is good and will transfer, that it does do that. And I think all partners involved understood that that was a necessity and that we could no longer continue in the path that we were going, but we had to make it so that students would have the ability to take across all of the hours that they had at the community college and would not be penalized in such that I've run out of financial aid because I use it all over here, and so now I'm over here and I'm ready to take my four-year courses and I have no aid left. We understood that. Once we saw the big picture, understood that this was really going on, and it was true because we were able to trace it. we understood then that we had to come together as a collective bargaining group. And it's been a good ride. Yes, there have been snags. Yes, there's been heated conversations. But at the end of the day, as I said in my talk earlier, we all knew that this had to be done. And this has made a huge difference, the reality of it.
Fantastic. So Pearl, tell me about that moment, if you can recall, or sort of the conversations that occurred when you moved from thinking about 15 to finish to the right 15, right? Ensuring that it's not just good enough that students are enrolled in 15, they have to have the credits that are going to get them to graduation. Talk about sort of what that conversation, how data maybe played a role into changing the conversation in Hawaii.
Well, it was very clear to us that we had made major strides forward in having our students take 15 credits, but it clearly was not enough. We needed them to take the right credits. And really, it was having the tool that really helped us push this forward that made the big difference. So our GPS tool already calculated for students what their course had to be, but when we were able to put that into and had all students register via GPS, so now we have default pathways for all of our students set as of 2017, so just fall 2017, and we saw another big significant increase in the percentage of students taking 15 credits. So it was really working together with the STAR GPS people and having the right tool in place to move that forward.
So Donna, you know, we go way back. You and I together, right? When CCA first started, we were content experts and have worked together, and of course, because of the great work you've done with ASAP. So if you've got some key lessons that you learned from that about how to get something like that, so innovative and so groundbreaking, implemented, sort of what did you learn from that experience that you think you can apply to the work you're moving forward with Momentum Strategy?
We do go way back. The first time I ever spoke about ASAP publicly, it was at a CCA convening with Tom in a little airport hotel in Indianapolis, maybe 50 people. So I remember it well. So we have learned some important lessons. So the most important piece is what I mentioned earlier, is the absolute essential need for clarity of purpose and mission, and to put students at the center of everything you're doing. We do this every day in ASAP. So if something is not working for students, it has to change. And you have to have a crystal clear vision of where you want to go and work backwards from there. And as you work backwards from there, systematically, everything around what you're doing has to change to fit in to move you there. So we have benchmarks at every level. So it's critical to have clarity of mission, put students at the center of what you're doing, moving backwards from where you want to be. And anything that is in your way, you either climb over it or you move it out of the way. But I don't mean literally you. I mean the collective you. The importance of partnership has been a humbling and incredibly important piece of the ASAP success story. ASAP doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to everyone at CUNY. Every branch of CUNY is involved in seeing an initiative like ASAP or CUNY Start be successful. From the registrars to the staff and testing to financial aid to our faculty, our college leadership, and the staff that run the program every day. So the importance of embracing we're in this together, and if someone presents a problem, to really listen to them explain why something is a problem, and then to fix it together. So those are a couple of the lessons we've learned: humility, listening, and clarity of purpose.
Great. So Betty, one of the big things about Houston GPS is Houston is it's huge. It's the fourth largest city in America. It's increasingly diverse. It's going to increase by a couple million more residents, and those residents are going to primarily be from communities of color. That's part of the growth. Talk about the importance of this work as it relates to ensuring that all students have an opportunity at the American Dream in Houston.
One thing that our chancellor always says, and that is Pathways is for all students. And we keep that in front of us because we understand that if we're going to provide equity, equity does not mean equal. It means that the right for this right group of people or this right person. So there are support systems that are necessary to talk about, to explore, to try to put in place to help every group that comes into our institution. And again, Houston Community College is one of the most diverse colleges in the United States. And we see it every day with the Hispanic population is growing by leaps and bounds. But we also, once we look at the retention rate, we see that that group is not performing as well as, of course, our Caucasian students. So again, providing the supports and then understanding culture, I think is quite important here. We did a focus group about a year ago with students to talk to them about how they viewed our supports that we were providing. And it was a wake-up call because you think you know, and sometimes you really don't know. It was amazing to hear how students talked about tutoring. One student said, I would never go to tutoring because I'm expected in my culture that when I get to a certain age, I'm supposed to be an independent student. Wow, we never thought of it in that manner. We thought that if you need help, this is available to you, never thinking that another student from another culture would see it as a negative. So understanding those needs, being aware of those needs, and being willing to just take that task on and say, you know, it's about student success. It's about student success for every student. And so with that thought, then the process becomes, how can I provide the services that every student needs in order to be successful?
I think we have time for a couple more questions. I want to go to Corley and John together, because what I've been most impressed about what you've done in West Virginia and Montana is sort of use your leadership roles as a system head, but not in a way that's collaborative and effective to really mobilize institutions to do the work. We're so impressed with the leadership in West Virginia. Paul with the commission, and Sarah Tucker, who's one of our fellows at the community colleges, and how they have set a vision, have provided leadership, and similarly John with Clayton, talking about how you exert your leadership in a way that really challenges but supports institutions.
I would say that if you're starting out and going to scale and co-requisite, the first thing you need to do is to get your data for your system or for your institution. You need to get your data, and you need to start the communication process with your data. What does your developmental student look like? Then what are your success rates? And keep making sure that you keep that data up to date, and making sure that the faculty members and the appropriate administrators know about that data. There's an article by Richard Azizi that makes 2 points. I think it's called Sound Waves in the Tar Pit, and he makes 2 points. And one is that college administrators are not trained to communicate well, so you need to think about the communications process. And the other thing he says is, don't presume to over-communicate. I mean, yes, you talk about co-requisite all the time, but down at the faculty level or at the chair level, they have other things on their mind. Mm-hmm. So you need to remind them of what's going on and follow up with a professional development. That's a good way to bring faculty together and to be able to communicate.
John?
I think I believe as a result of our work, I think folks came to the realization that we own this. This is on us. This isn't K-12. We accepted these students. We need to help them. And as you said, the data is very, very important. But as we moved into co-requisite, there was still, as I mentioned earlier, there was still a sense of apprehension. Would this really work? And so we had 3 institutions moved in right away. And it is working. I will share with you an example that Joyce Welburn, who's a faculty member at Helena College, sent me yesterday. She had a student 5 years ago drop out of Helena College because this student failed the remedial course. The student was so devastated, she dropped out. She returned just this past year and enrolled in the co-requisite Math 105 course and passed with a B+. That student is now that was spring, that student is now a full-time student at Helena College. That is an example of how this work, of what it's doing and the impact of retaining students. So I think communication is so important, and I think if we can share those stories, I think it starts to spread.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up this panel. Let's hear it for our Momentum Pathways leaders.